The return to Serenity Station was not a victory parade. It was a slow, limping journey. The Brute was a wreck, its hull scarred and one engine dead. A consortium salvage vessel, its elegant lines a stark contrast to the human shuttle's battered form, gently locked onto it and towed it home. Inside, the humans were quiet. The adrenaline was gone, leaving behind only deep fatigue and pain. When the hatch opened in the station's main hangar, the sight that greeted them was overwhelming. Not a cheering crowd, but a silent sea of aliens. Hundreds of them, from every member species, packed the viewing galleries and the hangar floor. They were utterly still. There was no sound except for the distant hum of the station. They simply watched as the four humans, moving stiffly, helped each other down the ramp. Shun's face was bruised, one eye swollen nearly shut. Tay had a compress held to a cut on his forehead. Mina favored her right arm, her shoulder dislocated and hastily reset during the flight back. Jiho walked with a careful, straight-backed stiffness that suggested cracked ribs. They were covered in the grime of exertion and the faint, coppery smell of blood. A medical team, a mix of Gellans and avian doctors, rushed forward with float beds. Chun held up a hand, stopping them. "We can walk," he said, his voice rough. The doctors hesitated, looking at their injuries, but stepped back. Ambassador Kaler approached, his feathers a display of colors the humans had not seen before a shimmering, respectful silver. He bowed his head, not a small nod, but a deep, formal bend from the waist. The entire assembly seemed to follow his lead, a silent, rippling wave of bowed heads and lowered antennae. "Team Lead Jun," Kale said, his voice trembling. "The consortium, the galaxy, owes you a debt that cannot be measured. You have done what all our combined greatness could not." Jun looked at the sea of grateful, awestruck faces. He saw not admiration, but a kind of fearful wonder. They were looking at them like they were monsters. Powerful, helpful monsters, but monsters nonetheless. He understood. They had done the impossible by being something the galaxy could not comprehend. "We completed the job," Jun said simply. "Now we need to rest, and then discuss the terms of our agreement." The following days were a blur of medical scans. Bland nutrient paste that the doctors insisted was perfect for their recovery, and quiet isolation in their quarters. The consortium offered them suites in the luxurious diplomatic wing, with soft music and calming lightscapes. The humans asked to be returned to their original plane room. It was easier to think there. When they were cleared for duty, the formal debriefing was held. It was in the same grand chamber as before, but the mood was transformed. The holographic star map now showed the system where the Devourer had been neutralized. A small, respectful marker indicated the rogue planet GC-788. The humans sat, posture stiff from healing injuries, facing the full council. The questions were technical, filled with a new, deep curiosity. How did their dampeners function under such stress? What was the exact nature of their physiological response to the psychic field? Chun, Mina, Tay, and Jiho answered plainly, without poetry. They spoke of adrenaline, of pain tolerance, of redundant biological systems. They described fear as a useful signal, not Aster, the Borland Fleet Master, its crystal body glowing a soft, steady blue, finally spoke the question on everyone's mind. "You refer to your home as a death world. You speak of these traits as normal, as adaptations. Do you not live in constant terror? Is your existence not one of endless pain and struggle?" Tay fielded this one. He considered his words. "It is not constant terror. It is constant attention. Our world is active. A cliff can crumble. Weather can change fast. Animals can be predators. You learn to pay attention. You learn to be strong or clever or fast. The struggle is just part of the background. It makes the quiet moments brighter. He thought of a sunset over a calm ocean, something these beings might never truly understand because they had never earned it by surviving a storm. And the fear? Pressed the Lyran scientist Ilara, her luminous eyes wide. You harness it? We live with it, John said. It is a part of us, like an arm or a leg. You do not argue with your leg. You use it to stand. We use the fear to stand when things are bad. The council fell silent, grappling with the concept. To them, fear was a weapon that disarmed. To these humans, it was a tool that built resolve. The final meeting was about the agreement. The consortium was prepared to give them starships, limitless energy, bio-enhancements. John listened, then shook his head. We do not want ships we cannot repair or technology we do not understand, he said. We want knowledge. We want the schematics for your medical scanners, your materials science databases, your agricultural synthesis patents. We want the tools to build, not the finished products. And we want open, but regulated, trade routes. It was a humble, wise request. It spoke of a species thinking of the long term, of lifting their whole world, not just enriching a few explorers. The consortium agreed immediately, adding more to the package than was asked. On the day of their departure, the hangar was once again full. This time, there was a gift. A small, sleek courier ship, a model common in the galaxy, sat beside the Unrelenting. Its lines were graceful, its hull gleaming. A token, Collar said, for your people to study, and a means to call us should you ever need help. John looked at the beautiful, fragile-looking ship, then at the Unrelenting, its armored hull patched and scorched. He understood the real message. The gift was a bridge and an apology. Thank you, John said. He turned to his team. Mina, Tay, Jiho. They nodded. It was time to go home. As the Unrelenting detached from the dock and turned its nose toward the distant star that was Sol. The entire station flashed its running lights in a universal signal of gratitude and farewell. On the bridge, the humans watched the glittering jewel of the station shrink behind them. What do you think they'll call us now? Mina asked, rubbing her mostly healed shoulder. In their records. Saviors, Tay said quietly. Weapons, Jiho corrected. His tone neutral. Jun stared at the retreating stars. They'll call us Deathworlders, he said. But they will say it differently now. Back on Serenity Station, Kyler stood in the now empty hangar, looking at the spot where the human ship had been. The consensus was already forming. Sol 3 was not just a classified death world. It was recategorized. In the new galactic databases, next to its designation, a new symbol appeared. It was a shield. The classification read, Sanctuary of Resilience. Species, human. Capability, crisis resolution, extreme environment. A soft chime alerted Claire to an incoming message. It was from a frontier mining colony in a distant spiral arm. Their report was frantic. A crystalline parasite was consuming their asteroid facility, one that emitted a sonic frequency that liquefied the internal organs of most species. Their own attempts to stop it had failed. The message ended with a plea. Kaler did not forward it to the Borland military or the Lyran scientists. He opened a new, direct channel using the protocols the humans had left. He attached the data packet, the colony's plea, and the offered payment. He typed a simple header, a header that he knew would become common in the files of the Galactic Consortium. We have a problem only Deathworlders can solve. He sent it. Across the light years, the signal began its journey. On Earth, in a training facility in the mountains of Korea, a young woman named Hana finished her morning run. Her communicator buzzed a priority alert from the new off-world liaison office. She opened it, sweat cooling on her skin. She read the header, then opened the attached files. She saw the alien parasite, read the physiological reports. A slow, fierce smile spread across her face. She turned and headed for the briefing room at a jog, ready to answer the call. The inside of the brute became a world of noise and pressure. The engines were a constant, deep-throated roar that vibrated through the metal frame and into the bones of the crew. Chun's hands were steady on the controls, but his knuckles were white. On the main screen, the view behind them was a nightmare of beauty. The Devourer filled half the starfield, a shimmering silent hurricane of violet and electric blue. It did not move like a ship. It flowed, consuming the space behind them, and it was getting closer. Distance? Chun's voice was a tight grunt, fighting against the G-forces pressing them into their seats. Ji-ho, monitoring the tactical display, read out the numbers. It's accelerating, faster than projected. We are being caught. The plan had a simple, brutal timetable. They had to reach the gravity well of the rogue planet, GC 788, and use it to whip them around and away, while the Devourer, drawn by their beacon, would be pulled into a collision course. But the timetable was crumbling. The Predator was faster than anyone had guessed. Mina, strapped into her seat behind the pilots, watched the energy feed from the beacon. It's feeding on the pulse. We're not just leading it, we're feeding it. Every burst from the beacon makes it stronger, hungrier. A low, subtle vibration began to thrum through the ship's hull. It was not the engines. It was something else, a resonance that made their teeth ache and their stomachs churn. The air in the cabin felt thick, charged with static. A sense of deep, irrational dread began to seep into the cockpit, cold and oily. The field is reaching us, Tay said, his medical monitor beeping as his own heart rate spiked. Residual effects. It's getting stronger. On the comms, Yuna's voice crackled from the unrelenting, strained with distance and interference. Biometrics show severe systemic stress. Adrenaline, cortisol are at dangerous levels. You must focus. Breathe. The fear is data. It tells you it's close. Use the data. June focused on the breathing. In, out. He let the cold fear sit in his chest, acknowledged it, and then pushed it down into a box. The box was labeled later. Right now, he needed to fly. But the pressure was immense. It felt like a weight on his mind, a whisper of every failure, every loss, a voice telling him it was hopeless. He saw Ji-ho flinch beside him, a memory of some old wound flashing across his friend's stony face. It's trying to paint pictures. Ji-ho growled, shaking his head sharply. Ignore the pictures. Look at the numbers. The numbers were bad. The rogue planet, GC 788, was a dark, lonely sphere on the screen, growing slowly larger. The Devourer was a swirling wall of death, filling the rear view. The gap between them was shrinking by the second. We need more speed, Chun said. The engines are at 110% already. Mina called out. Any more, and we risk a containment breach. Calculate the risk of a breach versus the certainty of being eaten. Chun shot back, his voice hard. Mina's fingers flew over her console. A moment later, she gave a sharp nod. Pushing to 120. We have maybe 3 minutes before the core overheats. A new, higher-pitched whine joined the engine roar. The G-forces increased, becoming a crushing hand on their chests. Breathing became a conscious effort. Chun felt his vision narrow, dark spots dancing at the edges. He fought to keep his eyes on the course. The Devourer loomed. The psychic pressure intensified. Now it wasn't just a feeling. It was a physical thing. Tay cried out, a short, sharp sound of pain grabbing his head. It's like needles. In my thoughts? Don't listen to the needles. Yuna's voice was desperate over the comms. Your brains are interpreting the interference as pain. It is not real damage. Confirm. Tay, sweating, looked at his medical scanner strapped to his own wrist. His vitals were screaming, but there was no physical trauma. It confirms. No physical damage. It's an illusion. He said it like a mantra. It's an illusion. The rogue planet was now a vast, dark circle ahead of them. This was the moment. They had to skim its gravitational field, perfectly close enough to get the slingshot. Not so close they were dragged into its pull or smashed into its surface. Initiating gravity turn, Jun announced, his voice thick with strain. He fired the maneuvering thrusters. The brute groaned in protest, its frame stressed to the limit. The ship angled sharply, the dark bulk of the planet now filling the forward viewport. The Gi forces shifted, pulling them sideways. The straps of their seats dug into their shoulders. Behind them, the Devourer followed, committed to the chase, drawn into the planet's gravity well. But it was not a ship. It did not correct its course. It was a force of nature, and nature's path was straight into the heart of the gravity. Now, Mina, kill the beacon and max thrust on my mark. Jun ordered, his eyes glued to the trajectory plot. The line representing their ship curved sharply around the planet. The line representing the Devourer was a straight shot into its core. Ready? Mina yelled. The planet's surface rushed up at them, a barren, metallic wasteland. The pull of gravity was immense, a giant's hand trying to clutch them. Alarms blared proximity, heat, stress, mark. Mina cut the power to the screaming beacon. The brilliant light on their hull died. At the same instant, June fired the main engines at absolute maximum thrust, fighting against the planet's pull to fling them around it. For a second, they were in free fall toward the surface. Then the engines bit, and the force was unbelievable. It felt like being sat on by a mountain. Chun's vision went gray, then black. He fought to stay conscious, his hand locked on the throttle. He heard someone, maybe Jiho, let out a choked gasp. A red warning light flashed. A hull plate had buckled. The sound of tearing metal screamed through the ship, and then they were shooting out of the planet's shadow, back into the starlight. The crushing pressure lessened, just enough for Jun to drag in a burning breath. He looked at the rear display dot. It was a silent, spectacular funeral. The Devourer, bereft of its bright beacon, but caught in the grip of gravity and its own momentum, could not turn. It poured into the atmosphereless void above GC 788, a waterfall of impossible colors. Then it struck the planet's surface. There was no explosion. There was a terrible, silent absorption. The vibrant, hungry energy of the Devourer met the absolute, dead neutrality of the iron core. The colors swirled, darkened, and then began to fade, like dye dissolving in a vast, cold metal ocean. The psychic pressure in the cockpit vanished instantly, leaving a ringing silence that was almost as shocking. The crew of the Brute sat, strapped in their seats, breathing in ragged, painful heaves. They were bruised. They were bleeding from their noses and ears from the extreme Gi forces. They were soaked in cold sweat. On the comms, there was only static for a long moment. Then Yuna's voice returned, clear and trembling with an emotion she couldn't name. Sensors confirm. The Devourer's energy signature is collapsing. It is being neutralized by the planetary core. It worked. No one cheered. Tay slowly began checking the others for injuries, his hands shaking. Mina was already muttering about the hull breach, running a damage report. Jiho leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes, just breathing. June looked at the screen. The rogue planet was just a planet again. The beautiful, terrible storm was gone, swallowed by something that could not feel its terror. He unclenched his hands from the controls, one finger at a time. Every muscle ached dot, he opened a channel to Serenity Station. The silence from the other end was total. He could picture the grand chamber, the dozens of alien species, frozen before their screens. "This is John," he said, his voice hoarse and quiet. "The devourer is contained. The path is clear. We are returning." He paused, then added the only thing that felt true. "We need a tow. And medical." The return to Serenity Station was different. The air in the corridor felt charged. News of the humans walking through a psychic echo and merely feeling unwell had spread through the station's neural network like an electric current. The aliens they passed did not look at them with pity, no. They looked with a mixture of awe, confusion, and a faint trace of fear. June's team moved with purpose, ignoring the stares. They went straight to the small, utilitarian quarters they had been assigned. It was a plain room with functional bunks and a table. It felt like home. John placed his hands on the table, leaning forward. "All right, we felt it. We know what it is. Now we need to know what we can do about it. Mina, the energy consumption." Mina nodded, pulling data from her tablet and throwing it onto the room's small screen. It showed the chaotic readings from Outpost Theta. "It's a feeder. It likes dense, complex energy signatures. Think of it like a cosmic shark. It senses the electrical activity of a brain, the power of a reactor, and it swims toward it. The psychic terror? That's not its weapon. That's its teeth. It's how it breaks open the shell to get to the meat inside." Tay picked up the thread. "And that's our advantage. Its teeth don't work on us the same way. Our minds are quieter on that frequency. We get the stress hormone dump, the fear, but not the system crash. Our bodies are built to handle that dump. It's a survival mechanism from our world. We can operate while afraid." Ji-Ho, who had been silently checking the seals on his equipment, spoke. "So we are bait that doesn't go into shock. How does that help? We cannot punch an energy storm." "We don't have to," John said, his eyes on Mina's data. "We change the menu. If it goes for the biggest, brightest energy source, we give it one it can't digest." A plan began to form, not in a flash of inspiration, but like a puzzle being assembled from brutal, simple pieces. They needed to speak to Yuna, their neuroscientist who had remained on the Unrelenting to monitor their biometrics during the outpost trip. Her analysis of their physiological data was the final piece. They requested a secure channel to their ship. The consortium, now far more cooperative, granted it instantly. Yuna's face appeared on the screen, sharp and focused. She had seen their spiking heart rates and cortisol levels in real time. "You felt it," she said, no greeting needed. "We did," John replied. "It was bad. But it was just bad. Not magical." Yuna nodded. "My analysis confirms. The psychic signal is a carrier wave on a specific, complex frequency. Your brains lack let's call them the psychic antennae to fully interpret it. You're getting the side effects, the emotional bleed, the primal fear response, but not the commanded shutdown. It's the difference between hearing a loud, scary noise and being given a direct, hypnotic command to sleep. You can resist the noise. Can we block it? For others?" Tay asked. Yuna shook her head. "Not with any tech we have or could build in time. You can't block a wavelength that permeates matter itself. But you can maybe distract it. If it's attracted to energy, give it a more attractive target. Something it can't consume that will lead it into a trap." The target they identified was in the charts. A rogue planet, designated GC788. It was a barren, metallic world, a cold core of iron and nickel with no atmosphere, no magnetic field, and virtually no complex energy signature. It was the galactic equivalent of a stone, and it was on a long, slow orbit not far from the Devourer's projected path. The plan was insane. It required luring a cosmic predator across millions of kilometers of space toward a dead rock. To do that, they needed the brightest, loudest, most delicious bait possible. They needed to make a bomb that wasn't a bomb. Mina spent the next cycle in the station's engineering bay, surrounded by fascinated and horrified alien technicians. She requested the most powerful, unstable energy capacitors they had. She asked for industrial-grade plasma conduits and unrefined fuel slugs. She didn't want elegant, controlled power. She wanted raw, screaming energy output. You'll create a single-use beacon with the energy signature of a small star, she explained to the head engineer, a Thulian who hummed with anxiety. It must pulse. It must be noisy. And it must be housed in something we can move very, very fast. Meanwhile, June and Geo were in the station's flight simulators, learning the basics of consortium shuttle dynamics, only to then reject them. Too smooth, too stable, Geo grunted after a simulation ended. We need something that can handle extreme G-forces and rapid, chaotic acceleration. Our ship, the Brute, can do that. The Brute was the humans' landing craft, still docked in the Unrelenting's belly. It was a heavy-lift shuttle designed for planetary atmospheres and asteroid mining. It had immense kinetic engines, crushing inertia dampeners, and was built like a flying bunker. It was ugly, slow to turn, and perfect. The consortium's military commanders were summoned. When Jun laid out the plan, the room fell into a stunned silence. You wish to take a construction vehicle, bait the Devourer, and lead it to GC-788? The Borland Fleet Master hummed, its facets flashing crimson with disbelief. The gravitational calculations alone. One error and you are consumed. We are aware of the risks, John said calmly. But your records show the Devourer changes course when presented with a stronger energy source. We will become that source. We will outrun it to the rogue planet and use its own gravity to slingshot away at the last moment, leaving the Devourer on a collision course with the core. And if your primitive dampeners fail, the acceleration will turn your bodies to paste. A Gellan commander bubbled. Tay answered this. Our bodies are durable. Our bones are dense. Our cardiovascular systems are reinforced. We regularly tolerate high-gravity maneuvers in training. It will be very difficult, but not impossible. The word hung in the air. Training. To the aliens, the idea of training for such a specific, terrible form of suicide was chilling. To the humans, it was simply preparation. Permission was granted. There was no other option. As the team made final preparations, Ambassador Kaler found June in the hangar bay, watching as consortium drones welded the jury-rigged, pulsing energy beacon to the underside of the Brute. The craft looked like a beast with a glowing, cancerous growth. You do this, Kaler said softly, and you will be heroes to 1,000 worlds. Jun didn't look away from the work. We're not doing it for that. Then why? Jun finally turned to him. His face was calm, but his eyes were like chips of flint. Because no one else answered. And because that thing out there, it's just another predator. On our world, predators that threaten the whole group get hunted down. It's the rule. The final hours were a blur of activity. They loaded the Brute with supplies, extra oxygen, medical kits, and stimulants. They ran system checks on the heavy-duty inertia dampeners, which were still far less advanced than galactic standard, but built for sheer punishment. Yuna's voice came over their comms from the Unrelenting, which would remain at a safe distance to monitor. Biometric feeds are steady. Remember, the fear you feel is data. It's information about the threat's proximity and intensity. Use it. Don't fight it. Chun, Jiho, Mina, and Tay suited up in their reinforced environment suits. They were quieter now, focused inward. There were no grand speeches. They boarded the brute, the hatch sealed with a solid final thud. The interior was all exposed conduits, hard metal seats, and blinking red and green lights. It smelled of ozone and sweat dot in the station control room. The entire consortium leadership watched on the view screen. They saw the ugly craft detach, its engines glowing a deep, angry orange. It moved away from the beautiful station, a blunt tool heading toward a sublime nightmare. Inside the shuttle, Jun took the pilot's seat, Jiho beside him as co-pilot. Mina and Tae were strapped in behind, monitoring the shrieking energy beacon. On the main screen, the sensor feed zoomed in. There it was, the Devourer, a swirling, beautiful, terrifying vortex of colors that hurt the mind. It was closer now, heading toward a lush, populated world. Jun activated the beacon. A pulse of visible light, raw and white, erupted from the craft. On the sensor screens, the energy signature spiked into the extreme. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, like a great eye turning in the void, the Devourer's forward edge shimmered. It hesitated. Its path, once straight for the planet, wavered. It turned. The entire vortex began to reorient itself, drawn by the brilliant, screaming signal of the human shuttle. It was a shift so vast it was visible on the screen. It was now coming for them. "Bait is taken," Jun said, his voice flat. He pushed the thrusters forward. The brute surged ahead, its engines roaring. The chase was on. The grand briefing room was a monument to galactic harmony and advanced technology. Soft, ambient light glowed from the very walls. A holographic star map, beautiful and intricate, dominated the center of the space. Ambassador Kaler stood beside it, his feathers slowly regaining some of their blue hue, though anxiety still made them tremble. Jun and his team entered. They did not marvel at the floating displays or the seamless architecture. They walked the large, organic-looking seat pods provided for them and remained standing. Their eyes were on the map, on the data streams, not the beauty. "Welcome, Team Lead Jun," Kaler began. His voice translated softly in the air around them. "We are grateful for your prompt arrival. Before we begin, perhaps introductions? Our consortium is a collective of many minds." Jun gave a single nod. "This is Mina, our engineer. Tae, our medical and biological specialist. Jiho, our tactical and security lead." Each human offered a short, sharp nod of their own. No smiles, no formal bows. They were waiting for work. "A pleasure," Kaler said, though the sentiment felt strange. "We have assembled our foremost scientists to share all we know of the Devourer." He gestured, and several other aliens floated or stepped forward. A willowy Lyran with large, luminous eyes. A gelatinous Gellan in a mobile tank. A Borlan whose crystalline body refracted the light. The Lyran scientist, named Ilara, spoke first. Her voice was like a melody. "The Devourer is a psychic catastrophe. It projects a field of pure existential terror. It targets the conscious and subconscious mind simultaneously, bringing forth the subject's deepest fears. No shield has blocked it. No mind has resisted it." Tae, the human medic, tilted his head. "Physiological effects? Total synaptic overload," the Gellan burbled via its translator. "The body shuts down. Catatonia. In some cases, fatal cerebral hemorrhage." Jiho spoke, his voice low and even. "Range and propagation method? It expands like a storm," the Borlan hummed, its facets flashing. "It feeds on organized energy and thought. The stronger the mind, the brighter the civilization, the quicker it is drawn and consumed." Jun crossed his arms. "You've tried physical barriers? Molecular shields are dissolved. Projectiles are vaporized or absorbed, adding to its mass," said the Borlan. "It is not a physical entity, as you understand it. It is a conscious plague. Mina, the engineer, finally spoke. She pointed a blunt finger at the hologram, at the energy readings surrounding the phenomenon. These energy signatures. They spike in these bands here and here. That's not just psychic output. That's raw, ambient electromagnetic consumption. It's eating power grids, ship cores, anything with a strong charge. The alien scientists shifted, a ripple of surprise moving through them. The Lyran Elara blinked slowly. The psychic resonance is our primary concern. The energy drain is a secondary symptom. For you, Mina said, her tone not unkind, simply factual. If your mind fails first, you don't live to see the lights go out. A tense silence followed. The humans were not following the script. They were ignoring the profound philosophical horror and focusing on mechanics. Kaler found it unnerving. The point, John said, cutting through the quiet, is that you've been fighting a ghost. We are not equipped to fight ghosts. We need to know what it does, not what it feels like. Show us the last place it touched. A station, a ship, something it left behind. The request was so practical, it was shocking. No one had asked to visit a corpse. They were too busy mourning. After a brief consultation, it was decided. The humans would be taken to Research Outpost Theta, a scientific station on the edge of the danger zone. It had been grazed by the Devourer's outer fringe 3 cycles prior. The crew had been recovered catatonic, but the station's structure was mostly intact. The journey there was on a sleek consortium shuttle. The humans sat together, speaking in low tones in their own language. They ignored the serene views of stars, instead reviewing data on small, rugged tablets. They shared a package of dense, dry-looking food bars, chewing methodically. The shuttle's pilot, a graceful avian like Kaler but younger, watched them with wide eyes. He finally dared to speak as they neared the derelict outpost. Your species? You have no psychic sensitivity at all? How do you communicate? How do you bond? John looked up from his tablet. We use words and actions, but the depth of feeling, the shared understanding. Tay offered a rare, thin smile. We misunderstand each other constantly. It is a lot of work. He went back to studying a readout of the station's compromised life support systems. The Outpost Theta airlock was a grim place. The station's elegant, flowing corridors were dark, lit only by emergency strips. The air was cold and stale. Faint scorch marks marred the walls where control panels had shorted out. The silence was absolute and heavy dot the consortium escort. A pair of Borland technicians hovered nervously at the entrance. We will monitor from here. The residual psychic echoes can be distressing. John nodded. He and his team clicked on powerful handheld lights, beams cutting through the gloom. They moved in a loose formation, Jiho taking point, his light scanning corners and ceiling junctions. Mina went straight to a blown-out control console, pulling a multi-tool from her belt and prying the faceplate off with a sharp crack. Look at this, she said, her voice loud in the silence. The surge didn't come from the power core. It came from outside, through the hull, and hit the secondary systems first. It bypassed all the primary safety protocols. Like it knew the roadmap. Tay was examining a dark stain on the floor. He took a small swab, dabbed it, and inserted it into a scanner on his wrist. Biological residue. Stress hormones in amounts that would kill one of us. Their bodies flooded themselves with fear chemicals until everything shut down. Jun and Jiho moved deeper into the station, toward the observation deck that had faced the Devourer. The viewport was a massive, transparent crystal, now lightly frosted from the loss of climate control. Beyond it was the empty, beautiful starfield. Jiho knelt, running his gloved hand along the base of the viewport. No pitting, no scoring from energy weapons. No physical impact at all. He looked up at Jun. It didn't hit this place. It passed by and looked at it. Jun stood before the great window, looking out at the stars. He was not thinking of cosmic horror. He was thinking of a predator. A predator that spooks its prey, makes it run, and then takes the weakest. This station was not the target. It was the warning. Back in the main corridor, Mina had rigged a portable power unit to a dead terminal. With a sputter, a single screen flickered to life, showing the last seconds of the station's external sensors. The data was chaos-spiking psychic wavelengths, off-the-chart readings. But in the video feed, they saw it. Not a monster, not a face. It was a shimmer, like a heat haze, but raw. It made the stars behind it bleed colors that didn't exist as the shimmer filled the screen. A low, sub-auditory thrum seemed to vibrate through the station's bones. The two Borland at the airlock let out a sharp, collective chime of alarm. The echo, "It is reacting to your presence." A wave of dizziness washed over the humans. It was not a voice in their heads. It was a pressure, a feeling of deep, formless dread settling in their stomachs. Their hearts began to beat faster. Tay's breath came short. Jiho's knuckles whitened on his light. Jun felt a cold sweat on his neck, an ancient, lizard-brain impulse to flee from something he could not see. But they did not collapse. They did not scream. They stood there, breathing through it, faces set in grimaces of intense concentration. "Report," Jun said, his voice tight but clear. Elevated heart rate. Adrenaline spike. Tay managed, his medical training taking over. "It's a systemic stress response. Severe anxiety. Not paralysis. Emotional contamination," Jiho grunted. "But it's just a feeling. It can't tell my body to stop." Mina, clutching the console, looked at the flickering screen, then at the terrified Borlands. Her fear was sharp in her eyes, but beneath it was a dawning, blazing understanding. "It's a signal," she gasped. "A broadcast. On a frequency we can sort of receive, but not decode. Our brains don't have the right receiver to make it into a picture. It's just noise. Bad, scary noise." The pressure began to fade as quickly as it came. The humans were left panting, pale, but fully in control of their limbs. They looked at each other, a silent message passing between them. They had felt the galaxy's ultimate weapon, and they had felt afraid, deeply, physically afraid, but fear was not new to them. Fear was a tool. Fear kept you alive. It told you where the edge was. Jun turned to the shaking Borland technicians. His face was stern, but there was a new light in his eyes. Not hope, but recognition. The recognition of a problem he could now begin to understand. "Tell the consortium," he said, his voice steady again. "Tell them we have felt the devourer. It is powerful. It is dangerous." He paused, and the ghost of something like a challenge touched his words. "But it is not magic, and we are not done." The silence of the Galactic Consortium chamber was not peaceful. It was the silence of a grave. On the vast holodisplay, a swirling violet and azure storm of energy slowly consumed the image of a planet. There was no explosion, no dramatic fire. The world simply unraveled. Its lights winked out, its communication signals fell silent, and then the image pixelated and vanished into the hungry maw of the phenomenon they called the Devourer. Ambassador Kaler, his delicate avian feathers flush with a stress-induced gray, let out a soft chitter. The Elixian colony is gone. Their psychic choir has been silenced. Around the circular room, representatives of the galaxy's great powers shifted. The aquatic gallons bubbled in their tanks, their water dark with despair. The crystalline Thulians emitted a low, discordant hum. All of them bore the same stunned defeat. For cycles, they had fought the Devourer. It was not a fleet, not an enemy they could reason with or target. It was a force of nature, a cosmic predator that fed on complex energy and thought. It emitted a psychic field of pure, primal terror, a mind weapon that bypassed all shields and turned the most disciplined warrior into a quivering, useless husk. Advanced technology sputtered and died in its wake, consumed by the storm. It was the perfect, unstoppable scourge. We have broadcast the universal distress call on all frequencies, stated the Gellan envoy, its voice translated as a watery gurgle. We have offered every treasure, every piece of non-lethal technology. We have begged for a solution. And the responses? Kaler asked, though he already knew the answer. One by one, the replies had come in. The mighty Borland Empire, with their starships of living crystal, sent regrets. Their warriors, they explained, were psychologically linked. The Devourer's terror would shatter their collective mind. The serene psychic weavers of Lyra sent a message of profound sorrow. Their great shields, designed to deflect mental attacks, only seemed to attract the Devourer like a beacon. The mechanical collectives found their logic circuits frying in the anomalous field. Each civilization, no matter how advanced, had a breaking point, and the Devourer found it with cruel ease. The chamber's main console chimed, a soft, forgotten sound. A low-priority communication packet had arrived, filtered to the end of the queue. The system had automatically sorted it. Its point of origin was listed as an unremarkable, high-gravity world in an unmapped spiral arma Class 12 Deathworld, catalogued as Sol 3. The designation meant it was a planet of extreme and violent conditions, considered too dangerous, and its native life too primitive for membership. The subject line was blunt. Consortium Distress Call Gamma 7. Terms accepted. Kaler blinked his nictitating membranes in confusion. A death world? They are not on the recipient list. Their species, humans, I believe the file says, were not consulted. Their technology level is pre-psychic integration, barely post-planetary. Perhaps it is a joke, hummed a Thulian. Or a misunderstanding. Open it, Kaler said, a faint, hopeless curiosity stirring the message unfolded. It was not a visual transmission. It was pure text in a stark, efficient font. It read, to the Galactic Consortium. We have monitored your distress broadcast. We understand the nature of the threat designated the Devourer. We are equipped for high stress, non-psychic engagement in extreme environments. We accept your offered terms of technology and trade rights. A solution team is en route via sub-FTL jump. Estimated arrival at your primary hub in 3 standard cycles. Prepare for physical, non-energy-based intervention. Do not attempt to adjust your docking protocols for our vessel. We will manage. June, Team Lead, Earth Contingent. The silence returned, now tinged with bewilderment. Sub-FTL? Their journey would take them decades. A Borland representative stated, its crystalline form flickering. They say they are equipped, murmured the Gellan. With what? Clubs? Chemical explosives? The Devourer eats plasma. Lances for sustenance. Kaler called up the planetary file for Sol 3. The data was shocking, but not in a way that inspired hope. The gravity was 1G, standard, but the atmospheric pressure shifts were violent. The tectonic activity was constant and brutal. The planet's biosphere was a catalog of horrors, predators, that hunted with patience and complex tactics, plants that produced deadly neurotoxins, microorganisms that could decompose advanced alloys. The humans themselves were described as a paradox, physically frail by symmetrics, yet possessing a terrifyingly robust biology with redundant systems, extreme pain tolerance, and a bizarre capacity to enter states of heightened aggression or focus under stress. They are survivors, Kaler mused aloud. Their world tries to kill them every day. But this, the Devourer, is not a beast or a quake. It is psychic annihilation. Their message says non-psychic engagement, the Thulian noted. Perhaps their very primitiveness is their shield? A blind creature cannot be fooled by illusions. A bitter laugh echoed from the Borland. A blind creature also walks off a cliff. Let them come. Their arrival will be a minor curiosity before our end. We have no other options left. The decision was made by absence of alternative. The consortium sent a brief acknowledgement. They did not expect salvation. They expected to witness the naive demise of a brave but foolish young species. As the 3 cycles passed, the mood in the glittering advanced stations of the core worlds was one of quiet resignation. The Devourer consumed another outpost. Maps were updated with mournful black voids. On the final cycle, a sensor ping echoed through the main docking hub of Serenity Station. A ship was approaching. It did not come in on graceful gravity drives. It arrived with a thunderous roar of primitive but powerful kinetic thrusters, braking hard and fast. It was an angular, ugly thing, all reinforced plates and blunt edges, with none of the flowing lines or energy auras of galactic craft. Heat shimmered off its thick hide. It looked less like a starship and more like a siege weapon that had somehow flung itself into the void dot. It settled into the assigned docking cradle with a heavy, groaning clang that vibrated through the elegant station superstructure. Port officials winced at the sound. The docking tube extended, hissing as it connected to a seemingly random airlock on the human vessel side. No delicate field harmonization, no protocol handshake. The humans had, as promised, managed. The inner door of the station airlock slid open with a whisper. Steam from the human ship's atmosphere rolled into the pristine, scented air of the hub. From the mist, 4 figures emerged, the galactic officials who had gathered, more out of morbid curiosity than protocol, felt a wave of profound disappointment. These were the saviors. They were small, not diminutive, but compact. They wore utilitarian environment suits, now unsealed, that seemed to be made of a layered composite, scarred and stained. Their leader, Jun, stepped forward. He was not tall, but he was broad, his movements economical and steady. His face was calm, his eyes taking in the towering alien architecture, the floating orbs of light, the assembled delegates with their gleaming skins and feathers, without a trace of awe. He saw exits, structural supports, potential threats. Behind him, a woman, Mina, was already looking past the welcoming committee at the station's wall panels, her fingers twitching slightly as if she wanted to take them apart. Tay, a man with a data slate strapped to his forearm, was sniffing the air curiously, then frowned slightly at the faint, pleasant fragrance. Jiho, the last, stood slightly apart, his posture relaxed, but his eyes never stopping their methodical scan. Jun gave a short, sharp nod. I am Jun. This is my team. Take us to whoever is in charge of the response. We need current tactical data on the Devourer's location and composition. Immediately, his voice was flat, direct. There was no ceremony, no deference. There was only a problem, and they were here to solve it. As they were led away, their boots leaving faint scuff marks on the immaculate floor, the Borland representative turned to Clur, its light pulsing with dismissive pity. Deathworlders, it hummed, the sound vibrating with contempt. They do not even know enough to be afraid. They will learn in their final moments. Clur watched the humans go, their forms swallowed by the grand, gleaming corridor. He thought of their planet's file, of the storms and the predators and the relentless tectonic rage. For the first time in cycles, a filament of something that was not quite hope, but was akin to desperate curiosity, stirred in his heart. Perhaps, he thought, not knowing how to be afraid was not the same as being brave. Perhaps it was something else entirely. Perhaps it was just how you lived, when you came from a world that never stopped answering every cry for help with another natural disaster.